It's the Sports Take Lunch Break, brought to you by Office Essentials, your hometown supplier of all the office products and furniture you need to grow your business. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I am your host, Andrew Corns, and we're back with another episode. Joining me on the mic this week is the one and only Dan the Man Sashanik. Dan, how are you?
I'm good, Andrew. How about you?
I'm doing well. Happy Easter to you.
Happy Easter to you. Did you have a good Easter?
It was nice, yes. You know, it felt like every other day for the last 3.5 weeks. I actually forgot it was Easter up until about Saturday.
Now, your boy's at the perfect age. How was that Easter egg hunt?
It was good. Yeah, he's 2.5, so he understands the concept of what's going on, and he was sugared up all day, and luckily slept really good once he came down from the sugar rush. So
okay, we usually have an either-or type thing. Plastic or real?
Great question. So I'm a plastic.
Okay.
My wife and her family growing up always went real.
Ooh, no.
And that, I'd never heard of it. I'm not going to lie to you.
You never heard of it?
I had never heard of, I mean, we used to decorate real eggs.
Yeah.
As like showpieces. We didn't hide them. We always hid plastic eggs. That's all I knew.
Oh, that's funny.
Is that a thing?
Apparently. Yeah, I mean, I remember, doing them growing up and dyeing them and looking for them, so maybe.
What kid wants to find a real hard-boiled egg? It's so disappointing once you know the idea of a plastic one with candy in it.
I mean, somewhere around 8 or 9, that's where my mind switched to. I was like, why am I looking for a real egg when I could have candy?
Now that I think about it, this memory must have been hidden deep away, but when I went to Catholic school, like K through 8,
yeah,
I do remember us finding real hard-boiled eggs, and there was like a gold and a silver one, and as kids, if you found one of those, you got like a special prize or something like that.
Oh, that's funny.
So yeah, it's all coming back to me. All right, well, this is our 4th consecutive week under strict quarantine and social distancing measures being put in place. We don't have a ton to talk about in the way of new sports since nothing's really being played, so we're going to spend most of our time going through our listener mailbag again and answering those burning questions everyone's asking. Sound good to you, Dan?
Looks good.
All right, before we get to that fun stuff, we do have to start on a somber note. I don't know if you saw news came out on Saturday morning in the hockey world. Did you?
Oh, yeah.
So 25-year-old Colby Cave of the Edmonton Oilers passed away after having a brain bleed. Hockey world is in mourning, and I just want to extend our condolences on behalf of our crew to Colby's family and friends. It's really sad when you see somebody 25 years old dying, and it's, I don't know, there's nothing really you can say about it that's not saddening. I don't know. You want to put your spin on it?
Well, it's just nice to see that every comment was just how this kid was so gracious just to be around hockey. Every time he got called up to Edmonton, he went to the front office.
Really?
And hugged everybody.
Wow, that's cool.
It was like a welcome back kind of thing. So I thought that was pretty cool. And, Boston reached out and said the same thing and, send their condolences. So the Bruin organization and especially the Edmonton organization, just got props to you guys.
Yeah, and what was really cool is on Twitter yesterday, NHL.com put up his first NHL goal, a video of it.
As an Oiler?
As an Oiler.
I heard that was. Yeah, I'm going to have to watch that. I heard that was spectacular.
It was fantastic, and it was nice to see in the comments every other organization, weighed in with a comment and just.
That's awesome.
It was really cool to see the hockey world come together under, unfortunately under a tragedy, but yeah. So we're going to jump into our first segment, which is something we introduced last week. It's Love It or Hate It.
Oh, all right.
What the premise is basically I spend all week bored out of my mind, yearning for something sports related. So, all right. So basically, I compiled a list of things I've been loving and hating in the sports world over the last week. So if you want to jump in, feel free to at any point. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We're gonna
do some of these.
We're gonna start off with something I loved. All right. And I'm gonna start with it because it's the most recent thing that I watched, and that was last night. So I don't know if you paid attention to ESPN, but they had NBA, WNBA, and NBA legends play a horse game yesterday.
Oh, was that when it was?
Yeah, so it was live. It was televised. They were all in their like remote homes. Most of them had, had like a basketball hoop in their driveway, or a couple of guys had like some really sick home courts or whatever. Paul Pierce especially. Paul Pierce's was insane.
Oh,
but yes, they were playing horse against each other, and they had the commentator from ESPN on NBA was like moderating and kind of asking them questions in between. A lot of fun to watch for me, somebody who's a basketball fan who's been looking for something So the 4 players who advanced yesterday, it was Chauncey Billups.
Oh, okay.
So he's retired, but he ended up taking down Trey Young, who's one of the best shooters in the league right now. It was really kind of funny to see old Chauncey take him. Mike Conley Jr. advanced, playing for the Memphis Grizzlies. Zach LaVine advanced, beating Paul Pierce. And then Allie Quigley, a WNBA star, took out Chris Paul. She's an absolute sniper. I think they said she's won the three-point contest twice in the WNBA. She's a 3-time All-Star. She specifically hit this one shot that was my favorite shot of the night yesterday. So she said Pistol Pete Maravich inspired her. She was on the left side of the basket. She was sitting down Indian style and threw it, banked it in off the glass.
Oh, geez.
Just a really cool shot. So it was a lot of fun. So they're into the semifinals now. Those matches are going to kick off on Thursday on ESPN, and then I assume at some point over the weekend they're going to have the final on Sunday. So just
nice.
a cool thing I'm loving because I just need sports in my life, and whether that's like NBA guys playing video games, whether they actually are out there playing a horse competition, whatever it is, I'm in on it. I think it's really cool to see. Specifically, the NBA seems to be embracing, trying to do something more than any other sport. I haven't seen anything really out of hockey or baseball, to their credit. Is basically copying what the NBA did, where the NBA had a competition where they had guys play the video game. So Major League Baseball set up one representative from each of the MLB teams, and they're going to play MLB The Show, which is the current video game. For St. Louis Cardinals fans listening, Matt Carpenter was our designated rep.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if he played a game yet. I saw some scores yesterday, but so he's going to be playing on behalf of the Cardinals. So that'll be kind of cool. But I think the reason the NBA is doing so well is people are interested in their stars. They have compelling personalities. So yesterday when you're watching Chris Paul and LaVine and Paul Pierce and all these guys, they're jawing at each other. They're hitting some of these interesting trick shots. It was a lot of fun. I just want to encourage more leagues to do that because I don't know about you, but me as a sports fan, I just want to watch something. It's that normalcy factor. I just want to feel normal a little bit. And sports is helping in a large degree to that.
Yeah, it kind of suits NBA with a horse. Really, what else can you do? It's not like, you could can't really have a home run competition. You can't really have a shot competition in hockey or soccer.
Yeah.
So I think I think you're kind of stuck. I did also see that Djokovic, Andy Murray put out a challenge to all the tennis community. Him and his partner did 100 volleys. And it's so funny how Andy Murray is a top 10 pro, has been for 15 years now, at least it seems like it. And his wife, girlfriend, fiance, whatever it was using a kid's racket. It's like you don't have an extra racket.
You're Andy Murray, yeah. That's great. I'm gonna have to look for that one.
And then so Djokovic. Got out the challenge, and him and his fiance or girlfriend would, again, I forget what his spouse. They did it too. So, it's one of those things where you pass it along.
Where'd you find it? Twitter?
It was just one of those Twitter things, or I see everything. One link leads you to somewhere else, and the link chain.
Sure, you ended up going down a link chain.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So. Okay, I'm going to switch over now to something I hated over the last week.
Sure. Yeah.
It's actually less hate and more just disappointment, and that is the PGA officially canceled the British Open. One of the 4 majors, you got the British Open, the PGA, the U.S. Open, and the Masters. The British Open was actually canceled outright, which as somebody who likes golf, I was looking forward to some majors. I think golf's in a unique position in the sports world right now because of all the sports that you don't really need spectators and you're already playing socially distant.
Yeah.
It feels like golf's one that's going to be able to pick up pretty quickly once we get past this because you can almost play by yourself. You don't have to pair up necessarily during this period of time. So seeing the British Open outright canceled kind of surprised me. Scheduled for July. It's also worth noting the PGA Championship, the U.S. Open, and the Masters were all postponed and rescheduled. So they're going to play in August, September, and November respectively on those. So they are still anticipating playing 3 of the 4 majors later this year. But for the British to just outright be canceled, I was kind of disappointed to see that because,
Well, in something like that, I would think that they would have to make room somewhere. And otherwise they're cramming they're cramming all these tournaments together, and you got to think that we're watching all the majors. You know, these guys are playing these minor tournaments that mean a lot to them because that's their moneymaker for the majority of the players. You know, they're playing these smaller tournaments so they can, advance. So maybe they had to make room, or maybe they're just like, let's call it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Somebody will have to fact check me on this. I don't know if the British Open's ever been outright canceled, other than probably during both of the two world wars.
Yeah,
but outside of that, I can't imagine they've canceled the British Open.
I'm sure we'll get comments. We always do.
That's right. We'll get to something later that we asked about last week. So another thing on the Love It side, last week I mentioned some movies I watched that were sports specific.
Yeah.
I got another wave of movies. I'm just trying to kill time in the evening. So a few movies I watched this week that were all sports specific. You had Rush. I don't know if you've ever seen Rush. It's with Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Bruhl, and they're playing F1 racers.
Oh, yeah.
It's sort of like a...
Haven't seen it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's a based on real life story of two F1 Formula One racers in the 70s and the battle they had. Really compelling story. It was directed by Ron Howard.
Oh, okay.
It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it a lot, so I would recommend anyone out there that's like a racing fan or a fan of Chris Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth was really good in the movie. So check out Rush. Another one is a film called Warrior. It's got Tom Hardy in it. It's got Nick Nolte.
Okay.
So it's based around mixed martial arts, and it's Tom Hardy and then his brother, another character in the film, and they're basically estranged from each other and their dad, who's played by Nick Nolte, and they're competing in this mixed martial arts tournament for $5 million or whatever. It's a really interesting story. You see a lot of boxing movies. I don't recall ever seeing another mixed martial arts movie. It was kind of the first one.
Okay.
Tom Hardy, huge fan of Tom Hardy. He just owns that movie. So if you're a fan of Tom Hardy and you like his work, I definitely recommend checking out Rush.
Isn't he Bane?
He is Bane. Yeah. So, and Mad Max, that's kind of who I think of.
Okay.
Not the original, but he's still Mad Max. So check out Warrior. This one's a little. Some people, Sean specifically, I'm thinking of. If Sean's listening, he's very anti like things that aren't sports. But I watched Molly's Game. You familiar with Molly's Game? It's trending on Netflix. So it's about poker. And it's a real life story about Molly Bloom, and she was a competitive skier who ultimately didn't go down the skiing route, and she sort of set up this underground poker tournament that became the biggest underground poker tournament in the world. And she had people like Tobey Maguire and Leonardo DiCaprio and famous business executives and athletes and musicians and all these different people playing this underground poker tournament. Oh. And ultimately it got too big and the Russian mafia got involved, and she ultimately had the FBI investigating her, and it just continued to escalate. But it was a lot of fun. It was Jessica Chastain playing Molly Bloom.
Ooh, I like her.
Had Idris Elba in it.
Ooh.
In an interesting role. Usually you think of Idris Elba as sort of as like the, he's kind of
very commanding personality.
Yes. He's much more subdued. He's playing her lawyer. Just a different role for Idris Elba that was really good. I had a lot of fun with it. So I'd recommend Molly's Game. It was trending like top 10 on Netflix this week. So I think a lot of people were watching it. And then the last one I watched was actually yesterday during the afternoon. It was a 30 for 30. ESPN's been running a lot of their 30 for 30 series. It was on Deion Sanders. I love Deion, but I think I was a little too young, like mid-90s. I was 10, 11 years old.
To appreciate his cockiness?
Well, that and just to understand the dynamics of. So the documentary was centered around him playing for the Falcons and the Braves at the same time.
Yes.
And there was I think it was 92. There was a period of time where the Braves were making a run at the World Series. And the Falcons were still a good team. And he was having to do double duty.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's like the behind the scenes of like the double duty and the contract situation and how the two organizations felt about him playing the other sport. It was a whole element of stuff that I wasn't aware of about the Deion story.
Yeah.
I'd highly recommend it if you have ESPN, ESPN Plus, anything like that.
Yeah.
Because I have some opinions about it, but I'm going to hold off until you watch it maybe at some point.
Well, I'm already going in to watch the horse. So
yes.
So yeah. I'll watch that too.
Yeah, it was really, really compelling stuff. And Deion was, on camera doing some interviews, and Deion's just a character, so it's always interesting. He's not afraid to tell it like he sees it. So
He's not subdued.
No.
He's the same personality. He was more back then. He was more of a personality back then, which is it's just classic because he put it on as a persona.
Yeah.
And you can see how genuine he really is when you see a lot of this off camera footage or whatever.
Yes. Yeah, Dion just awesome. Great athlete. So flip side, something I hated. I've been on record on the podcast since day one saying I don't think the XFL is going to exist as a sports league beyond year one. I just never saw a good outcome for the XFL. Stewart, who's been on the podcast, is very much a Farewell Ka Kaw guy. So I've been on the side of pessimism. He's been more on the side of optimism. News broke last week on Friday that the XFL has officially suspended operations. They told all their staff they're no longer employed there. They have no plans to pick up in 2021 or any time in the future. So effectively, the XFL is dead as of today. They only made it through 5 weeks of the season. The reason I hate it is even though I anticipated it was going to fail, it didn't get a fair chance. It didn't get to finish a full year.
No.
The reason it failed was because of the coronavirus situation. It was actually doing really well in a few markets. St. Louis specifically, I think it was really cool to see St. Louis get behind a football team again.
Yeah.
There was a lot of excitement. The Dome was rocking. They had just announced that they'd opened the next tier. So the next St. Louis game we were going to get was going to have the second tier open because anticipation was growing and excitement was growing. And now it was just kind of the legs have been cut out under the league, the team. So I'm on the hate it side because I hate that the league didn't get a chance to go out on its own. It was kind of taken out of its hands, and I don't anticipate seeing it come back, unfortunately, which for St. Louis is sad.
For it to come back, Vince McMahon needs to take a back seat. He needs to let somebody run his league. He needs to let somebody make the decisions. I'm fine if he's the capital, like he said before that he was going to pop in $5 million or whatever that was before he got out or whatever. But let somebody else run it. He's so into running his WWE, WWF, whatever it's called now. You can see that he's just a money grubber in that. So, it's you kind of wonder what kind of mindset he does have. We need somebody that wants to. I know Andrew Luck's dad is actually running the league, but how much say does this guy actually have? So I'd like to see that and. See if he had any part in the decision of canceling this. Yeah, for
XFL fans that are listening, I think Oliver Luck, Andrew's dad, as you had mentioned, I think he's the one component to it that could allow the league to return because I think he's a really good football mind, and he was not afraid to be transparent from the start of the process. And I think he ultimately has the right ideas that what the league did well in its short period of time was a lot because of Oliver Luck, not necessarily Vince McMahon. I think if Vince had been running everything, it would have been a crap show from the get-go, and I think Oliver got the best out of what he could. So I think if you're listening and you're a Battlehawks fan or an XFL fan, as long as Oliver Luck is still somehow associated with the XFL, you got a shot that maybe they can make a return at some point, but I think ultimately it's a bleak outlook for the league.
If it is a bleak outlook at this time, the NFL needs to snatch him up, and they need to talk about what they can do with some of these rules that the XFL was using, and to see if the NFL would be able to, especially at least try them in the preseason. When I first heard about the kicks, I was like, that's kind of rough. But then you actually see it in motion, and you're like, well, that's a lot safer.
Yeah.
So I would love to, you're going to take out some of these crushing hits and some of these dynamic runs, but to be safer, I think it'd be worth it.
I think you're right that I think the XFL's this second run of the XFL, the legacy of the league will be what it does to influence the NFL because I do think the kickoff is going to find its way into the NFL. It's safer. It created more opportunities. The statistics showed that more teams were more inclined to actually try the kickoff because of the situations. I could even see maybe the extra point thing being played with where you can go for 1, 2, or 3. It's a little gimmicky for me, but I could see the NFL trying to do something, and I'm not opposed to them giving it a shot in preseason or doing something to that capacity. But, I think the XFL's it's going to be remembered for what it does to improve the NFL. So, and that's not a bad thing necessarily.
No.
Okay, next thing I'm going to say, I love it. So I've been railing for this is the 4th week now that I've mentioned the UFC and Dana White in the last 3 weeks.
Oh, okay, I know what you're talking about.
It has been bugging me that Dana is the one person running a sports league organization who's been going against everyone else saying we got to shut down operations. He's been like dogged about, I'm going to have a UFC event.
Finding a private island.
He was talking about funding an island to fly people in. He had also mentioned there was a Indian reservation in California that's not under government sanctions and athletic sanctions, so he could get fighters to go to this Indian reservation and avoid sort of circumvent things. So the fight was supposed to take place this upcoming Saturday. He didn't have an official venue yet, and finally, thank goodness, on Thursday it was announced that the Disney executives, the ESPN executives, and the governor of California all kind of got together and said, we have to shut this thing down. And so finally, officially, the fight that was supposed to take place this Saturday, UFC 249, has been canceled. All upcoming fights have been suspended indefinitely.
I didn't hear about the Disney stuff. I heard he heard about our podcast and didn't want to face me.
You might be right, yeah. I think it's a smart move by Disney and, and ESPN. Why take the risk of getting the bad exposure if something were to happen to one of these fighters, contracting something? Or I don't see people in our position. I'm a huge UFC fan or MMA fan, and I'm not about to drop $70 on a fight when things are so tight financially for all of us in this current economy. It just doesn't make sense, and I don't anticipate there would be much of a buy rate. And I think ESPN just kind of looked at it and said, the risk isn't worth the reward. We just have to step in. And it was nice to see. I'm loving that somebody had to step in and take it out of Dana's hands, because he was just all about greed, and that's all that mattered to him.
You want to do something, just videotape some of your sparring sessions, and because there's guys that are sparring that are locked up together, during this crisis. Find some other sparring sessions and throw that out there, and just call it the sparring sessions.
Yeah, and ESPN there's so much ESPN television that these hours need to be filled with something. Fill them with a bunch of UFC classic fights if you want. That's a good way to get new fans on board,
Yeah.
There's no need to put new fights. We're talking about UFC 249, right? So there's been over 200 cards over the UFC's lifespan.
And what's there, 5, 6 matches on a card?
No, there's probably 8 to 10 nowadays.
So,
yeah.
So you're looking at thousands of matches.
Thousands.
Yeah.
I mean, just put on old fights, classic fights, get new people into the sport, and then when things do pick up, hopefully you've increased your excitement levels and people are more excited. So I'm all against the Mortal Kombat fight island that he was talking about, or whatever was going on with Dana. So
Scorpion wins.
It was starting to feel really crazy. What's interesting is I was watching a Joe Rogan podcast. He does an MMA podcast on his show with some of his friends, and the news broke about the UFC fight being canceled when he was on air talking to one of his MMA friends, and Rogan is a commentator for the UFC, so he was scheduled to go to this island. So it was interesting to see him hear about it in real time and kind of talk through everything, and I thought he had a good perspective. So if you like mixed martial arts, if you're into Joe Rogan, I'd recommend checking out his podcast with Brendan Schaub, because he gives a really good insight into just what he was going through, struggling with, do I participate? Do I not? He said he was like 75% planning on going, but there was still that part of him that wasn't totally sure about it. So I'd recommend that.
Well, just on another note, real quick there, the Joe Rogan podcast, he's just such a down to earth, such a mentally smart man about everything. Now, he's not the smartest, and he will tell you that, but he has enough knowledge about everything that he can give you a good twist or a bad twist, depending on what you want to hear. But, just great experience. So, just plug Joe Rogan's experience real quick.
He doesn't need our endorsement.
No, he does not.
But I'm with you, though. He's my favorite podcast, and it's because, well, number one, it's because I love mixed martial arts, so I know there's a lot of mixed martial arts components to it, but he's not afraid to have anyone on from all ends of the spectrum, politically, socially, scientifically. He wants to give everyone a voice and an opportunity, and then he wants us, I think, the listener, the viewer, to be able to sort through it.
Yeah.
He's not trying to tell one side of the story.
No.
So I like the fact that I can turn on Rogan and
Yeah. Did you see him crush Dan Crenshaw? Is that what?
His Crenshaw one's really good.
Oh my God, he just he crushed everything the guy was saying. He was like, oh. I mean, at the end of it, that guy was stuttering, stammering. No offense to stutterers or stammerers, but you can just tell that he was locked in a corner because he didn't. Everything he was throwing at Joe was just like, yeah, I got an answer for that.
Yeah, the Crenshaw one's good. He did a couple with Tulsi Gabbard that are really good.
Okay.
He had Bernie on, so he hasn't been afraid to have high-profile political candidates in there, which I appreciate, because a lot of times when you're watching a debate, you only get 30-second, 60-second answers,
Yeah.
and a lot of times they're just saying what they think that we want to hear for the camera. And when they go on a Rogan podcast and they get 3 hours, they can really explain and articulate their points of view. And that's what I appreciate is just the long form portion of it. So that's enough about the Rogan endorsement.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go on a tangent.
He doesn't need our endorsement. He gets like 5 million views every time he puts up a video. So.
I just watched. I went back and watched News Radio, and that's just such a great
I love News
show.
Radio. Yeah. Okay, so I've got one more hate it, one more love it. So my hate it is I'm hating what this time where there's no sports being played is doing to stars and their legacy in the sports world. And I understand that. I'm not saying that I want them to be playing. Safety comes first. But when I think about it from a sports standpoint, it's unfortunate that some of these athletes are losing crucial time in their sports lifespan. And I singled out a couple of them this week that I thought were interesting. So LeBron James, he's in his mid-30s. He's an old 35, 36, in the basketball world because he came in out of high school. He and the Lakers have the best record in the West. There's a good chance that the Lakers could win the title this year. He knows he's chasing one man right now. He's chasing Michael Jordan in the conversation for greatest athlete of all time, greatest basketball player of all time. For LeBron to potentially lose this season if they cancel it or void it or whatever the case may be, would be really hard to take for a guy like LeBron, because he made the move to the Lakers knowing that the window was short and all the pieces came in place this year. They got Anthony Davis. Again, they're number one in the West. You have to consider them one of the favorites. If they lose this year, it would be really unfortunate to a guy like LeBron, who's been busting his butt for going on 20 years in the NBA to miss a chance. And the other guy, I'm not a huge baseball guy necessarily, but I saw this stat that was really interesting. So Mike Trout is, I don't know if you know this, I had no idea. Mike Trout's on pace potentially to be the greatest home run hitter in baseball history.
Yeah.
So if you look at Mike Trout's projections right now, if he continues on this pace throughout his career, he's on pace to hit 783 home runs. Barry Bonds currently has the record with 762.
Wow.
If you remove this season and you just take out this season, he's on pace for 737. So he'd be about 25 short of Barry Bonds. So this season, whether it's played or not or partially or whatever, it could determine if Mike Trout is or is not the all-time home run leader. So I hate the fact that this coronavirus situation has taken some of these stars and ruined their legacy potentially, So I'm disappointed in that. So that's my last hate it.
Well, it is, because some of these kids are in their prime. Some of these older players are, just passing through, just got through their prime, so they're just trying to catch, a few more years, or maybe just one more year. I'm thinking of Vince Carter still playing.
Yeah, Vince Carter's perfect comes to mind.
He's 42. I think. I always try to find the guy that's closest to my age, since I've aged out of all sports now. But yeah, it's nice to see that that some of these athletes have stepped up and kind of made themselves known on Twitter and TikTok, whatever, all these other kind of platforms that keep people interested. It's funny to see that these the celebrities, that the sports athletes are doing so much better than these celebrities. These celebrities are coming on and just saying, and showing off their big old house, and they're just being pompous. Whereas these athletes are coming on and they know that people are missing sports, and I could go a whole year without watching movies. I could stop watching movies and that would not faze me at all. But if you take sports out of my wheelhouse for a whole year, that's not fun.
Yeah, you're right. I think the athletes are doing a really good job with social media. I think of Steph Curry. A lot of the European soccer players are going on Twitter and putting up hashtag Ask Me Anything or whatever, and people are asking questions and they're responding. So a lot of cool stuff there.
Yeah. I did see. I was trying to look up what Cal Ripken's.
They mentioned it the other day because the anniversary just happened. You're talking about his Ironman streak?
Yeah. I was trying to see what that number was. 2,632. I read an article this weekend that he reached out to the gentleman who has the most right now, and it's like 200 and. No offense to this guy. No offense. I can't think of his name.
It's only 200?
Whitmer or something like that.
Wow.
It's only like 200 and something.
Wow. Just because of rest days and things like that?
Yeah.
Like the game's just evolved to a different...
Well, yeah. I mean, think about it. Even our Iron Man, Yachty, doesn't play 162 games.
Yeah.
So it's...
That's one of those records you're never going to see again. I'm not going to go too far off topic, but Cal Ripken, and he even blew away Gehrig's record by I think Gehrig's was like 2,100 and change. So
yeah,
he had like 500 more games than Gehrig.
Yeah, but I just thought it was funny that he would reach out to this guy.
That's great.
Just kind of give him encouragement, saying, hey, there's no way you're going to hit my number, but try it. Try to get as far as you can.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, my last love it, and then we'll switch gears to our mailbag. It's St. Louis specific. I want to tout a couple of St. Louis athletes who last week were in the news in a really positive way. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah.
Jason Tatum from St. Louis currently plays with the Boston Celtics. Bradley Beal, also a St. Louis native, plays for the Washington Wizards, 2 NBA stars. They are helping donate food in St. Louis and Tatum also in Boston. So they partnered with Feeding America to help with meals for those in need. So it's really cool to see Jason Tatum, Bradley Beal, 2 St. Louis local kids who are no longer in the city but still obviously love the city, probably come back here, have homes here. They're helping the community. They're using their unbelievable wealth and influence in the most positive of ways in such a uncertain time right now. So I just want to, give both of them a pat on the back and say, from a St. Louis native, it's really cool to see our top stars from the city doing something really cool for the community. So really proud that Jason Tatum and Bradley Beal are from St. Louis.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to be back with some listener mailbag questions. Here's a message from Office Essentials.
Every morning, the smell of the break room can either lead you in or push you away. Office Essentials has a great coffee variety featuring St. Louis's own Caldies to make sure everyone at your office is caffeinated up and ready to take on the day.
Is your office out of date? Is your furniture from the 20th century? With dedicated furniture design specialists, we can help transform your office into the newest trending designs. From collaborative spaces to standing workstations, let Office Essentials show you what we have. Okay, we're back. We're going to jump into something we've done the last few weeks, which is all of our listeners have been very helpful. They've been sending in a bunch of questions for us. Some are hypothetical, some are, very specific. They're just kind of full of whimsy. So if you're listening, please send us those messages on Twitter, on Apple, and Spotify, whatever. We want to hear those questions you have. We'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah.
Dan, we've got 8. We've got 4 and 4 each. Let's just jump right in. You want to go and hit me with your first mailbag question?
Yeah, let's do this. All right, let's go with okay. Who is the greatest athlete to never win a league championship?
Greatest athlete to never win a league championship. Okay. Well, I think if I'm not mistaken, this question comes out of an episode a couple weeks ago when we talked about Charles Barkley.
Yeah.
And we were comparing Barkley and Robert Horry, and people were debating who would you rather be because Barkley never won a championship. So he's one of the guys that people often look at as one of the best. For me, I'm going to actually stick with basketball. I think, in my opinion, the greatest athlete to never win a championship is Karl Malone. Did I steal your thunder? Were you going to go Karl Malone?
I was just picking up the envelope. I knew you were talking about the mailman.
Karl Malone, I think he's still the all-time leader in points. Maybe he's second. I think he's second behind Kareem, actually, now that I think about it. But Karl Malone, if you're not familiar with basketball or you didn't watch basketball in the 90s, was one of the absolute best basketball players in the world. They called him the mailman for a reason because he always delivered, even on Sunday. If not for Michael Jordan being the greatest basketball player that's ever lived, Karl Malone would have 2 championships. In 96, 97, 97, 98, those 2 years that they played each other in the finals, Jordan made some unbelievable plays that have gone down in history, but Karl Malone would have a couple of titles if he didn't run into the greatest of all time. So for me, Karl Malone, without a doubt, best player to never win a championship.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to think of anybody else that just pops in your mind. Another I could go to Barkley. You could always go to Barkley. I'm trying to think of some other.
I got a couple of football players in mind. So one's Barry Sanders.
Oh yeah.
Barry, in my opinion, again, I'm young. I never got to see Walter Payton necessarily. So for me, in my age, Barry Sanders was the best running back I ever saw in my life. The unfortunate fact that he got picked by Detroit is a horrible turn of luck that he ended up as a Lion his whole career, which is ultimately why he retired, because he didn't want to be in Detroit anymore.
Randy Moss, did he ever win one?
He didn't. You're right. He lost that year. The Patriots were 18-0 or whatever going into the Super Bowl.
I was just thinking about that. He's
got to be.
Yeah.
Another one from football, Dan Marino.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Marino made 1 Super Bowl, lost to the Niners, maybe. Didn't he lose to Montana one year, mid 80s?
I'm not sure.
I want to say 88. I'm going to mark down 1988. I'm going to fact check myself on that.
I thought the Dolphins won like 2 or 3 years before he showed up, and then just never got anywhere after that.
And there's one other that comes to mind. This is sentimental. This is at my heart. Mr. Steven Gerrard, Liverpool icon. Poor guy, played basically his whole career, since he was, in the youth academy as a 10-year-old with Liverpool. Never won a championship there. Came excruciatingly close. Had a moment that's been dubbed the slip in the soccer world, if you're familiar with the slip. Terrible for Steven Gerrard. So Gerrard, for me, is a sentimental choice.
Well, I can see that. Although, he still has that championship.
He's got the Champions League, So it's not a league championship, but it's also it's a trophy nonetheless.
It's pretty nice.
All right, Dan, ready for your question?
Hit me. Oh no,
this one is. Oh man, this is great. Okay, Dan, the best mustache in sports history is blank.
Rollie Fingers.
Ooh, Rollie Fingers. That's not who my brain immediately goes to. Why do you pick Rollie?
I just loved his handlebar mustache and the curl, and you just have to. My dad, growing up, my dad had a friend who had the same type of mustache and sort of looked like him. So it's just always stuck in my head. I do have an honorable mention if you...
Please, hit me with your honorable. It might be my...
You go with yours first before...
Okay. For me, there's no question the best mustache, and I'm not talking about Austin Matthews.
Oh, that's a cheesy one.
But I am talking about hockey.
I know you're going.
You know who I'm talking about?
Calgary Flame.
Oh, yes. Mr. Lanny McDonald.
That was my number 2.
That thing on his lip, that is not a mustache. That is beyond a mustache, okay? Whatever that thing was.
It's a dead caterpillar.
Yes, if you're not familiar with hockey, you're not familiar with the 80s Calgary Flames, look up Lanny McDonald and his mustache. That thing is it's an ugly thing of beauty. So for me, it's Lanny McDonald. Any other honorable mentions that come to your mind?
I'd like to honorable mention any 17 or 18-year-old athlete who's trying to grow a mustache.
Even better than that, I was watching on ESPN yesterday the National Spelling Bee. They were showing like historic spelling bees.
Oh, geez.
Some of those kids in the spelling bee have full-on mustaches.
Oh yeah,
and I just want to give them all credit because I was once a 17-year-old trying to pull off a mustache too, so I know the feeling. A couple others that come to mind: Ditka, he's got a pretty iconic mustache, like Ditka, and then Dale Earnhardt Sr.
Oh yeah,
I think of that, the stash, the Intimidator. There was something cool about it. For me, Lanny McDonald though. But, all right, next question, Dan. What do you got for me?
Sorry, let me get there. Let's see here. I think I'd be better at this. Do modern athletes have too much power over teams, coaches, and owners?
Okay. I feel like this one's going to cause some controversy because we've talked about this in the office. Sean and myself have. I'm very much on one side of things on this. So in answer to the question, do modern athletes have too much power? They have all of the power, and I'm okay with that. And what I'm saying by that is somebody has to have power in the situation. It's either going to be the owner, the coach, the player, essentially. I like the idea that the player, we as fans, we're watching the players. The players are generating the revenue for the leagues, the team, the owners. I see no reason why the players shouldn't have the power over the owners, over maybe not the coach. I don't necessarily like the idea that players can get coaches fired and things like that because they have more power. But I certainly like the idea that the players have more power than the owners, because I think the players in certain leagues, the NFL I'm thinking about, players don't have a ton of power in the NFL and get cut, at the drop of a hat. So I hate the idea that the NFL owners have so much power over players and can outright blackball certain players and things of that nature. I love the idea in the NBA that the players know that they're the people making the money. They're the reason we're watching and going to games, and they can ultimately dictate, what the owner does to make sure the team's relevant. So for me, not too much power, but they certainly have all the power, and I'm okay with that.
Well, I see your NBA, because the NBA owners and coaches and management, actually, they feel like they have the most feelings, the most givings to their players.
Yeah.
You mentioned the NFL. I don't think NFL players have any power at all. And I'm talking general, as in all 100 guys that are on the roster.
Right.
Just because, a Tom Brady or something is going to be step into an organization and say, hey, listen, I'm number 12. Give me the jersey. Mm-hmm. And everybody around him is going to go, here you go. But at the same time, he was offered the jersey 12, by the way, instead of, having to, which was really cool. But, some of these leagues, these athletes, I don't think they have nearly enough power. MLB, once again, I'm sorry, these kids are pros. I don't care if this is A-ball, if this is, the Grapefruit League, whatever. Feed these kids. Mm-hmm. Feed these guys. Pay them what they want. Really, do we need a jumbo screen to see a home run at a baseball stadium when you could use that millions of dollars to feed your whole organization for a year? I think some of it's stupid.
Yeah, I think the baseball and hockey, I've always said this, I stand by it. I think baseball and hockey sort of mirror each other in their traditionalist mentality and things like that. Hockey's the baseball of Canada, essentially. It's the pastime. I think those two leagues, the players need to do a better job of taking the power into their own hands, because oftentimes those players sign these ridiculously long contracts and are committed to a team, and at that point you've given full control over to your owner.
Yeah.
I think about soccer players, and this is why I think the NBA has done a really good job of assessing global sports and understanding that players should have the power. When I think about a lot of soccer teams around Europe, the players completely control the situation. A player can ask for, really they're demanding, but they're asking for transfers and things like that. Ultimately, a player goes where he wants to go, and if he feels like an organization or a club doesn't have his best interest in mind, doesn't believe in winning, doesn't have the right, infrastructure in place, they will use that power and they will go somewhere where they know they can win and make more money, and I'm okay with that. I got no problem with that. I'm all for the players are the ones putting their bodies on the line, really risking it. Again, I'm paying to go watch LeBron James. I'm not going to pay to see. I'm blanking on his name. The Lakers coach, coach the Pacers. But again, I'm not going to pay to watch the Lakers coach. I'm not going to pay to watch Jeannie Buss sit in the front office and run the Lakers organization. I'm paying to watch LeBron James. Of course, he should have the power. I'm all for it. Connor McDavid, he should have power. Occasionally you get a guy like Sid or Ovechkin, who they certainly have more power because they've been tenured in the league and they've won, but it's very rare for a baseball player or a hockey player to have power. And that's why also, when those players get an opportunity to have power, and I'm thinking about even last year, Bryce Harper, he was a free agent and he got a ton of flack for basically holding out on the free agent market until he got the best, most lucrative deal.
Yeah.
I got no problem with that.
No, not at all.
He had to spend many years in Washington. He made what, he signed a deal, and he didn't have a lot of power over his situation. And then the first chance he gets, he knows this is probably going to be his one contract where he can sign long-term, get max money, whatever he wants to do, go the place he wants. He did it. Time will tell if he went to the right place in Philadelphia, but they gave him the money, they gave him the years, they gave him what he wanted. That's ultimately what mattered. He wanted this, he wanted that, they gave it to him. I'm okay with that. I got no problem with it. So I often see a lot of times people get mad at players for, it could happen here in St. Louis this offseason. Alex Pietrangelo, he might not re-sign with St. Louis. He might end up Toronto. He could end up at a terrible team. If that's what he wants, if he ultimately wants to go somewhere where he's going to make the most money for the most amount of years, whatever he determines is his needs, if he goes there, good for him. He earned that power. He earned that control, and I'm okay with that.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got no problem with that.
No, that's fine.
All right, Dan, next question for you. This is a question that we've probably talked about a few times before, but somebody wanted to ask it very specifically. Should Pete Rose be in the Hall of Fame?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. You want to elaborate on that?
He's the all-time hit leader. I mean,
what about the all the betting and the gambling and things like that?
Well, it's funny that that MLB will turn a blind eye to anything that they'll deem that they want to turn that eye to. But it's stupid that Pete Rose is still banned. I don't understand.
I hope Stuart, who's a member of our podcast crew, is listening to this and would weigh in, because he very much is on the side of Pete Rose should never be in the Hall of Fame. And I'd like to get his opinion, because unfortunately I agree with you, Dan, that I think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame, and I'd like to have a differing voice in here to kind of give some balance. But yeah, I don't understand why what he did on the baseball field has essentially been erased from history. It doesn't. You can put him in the Hall of Fame and give him an asterisk. The Hall of Fame, and you and I have talked about this. I think the idea of Hall of Fame criteria and all that stuff is just ridiculous. Ultimately, we the general population, go pay money to these Halls of Fame.
Yeah, exactly.
Why are these elite group of sports writers voting and controlling who gets in this super top secret, only the cream of the crop get in because these people determine these people to be Hall of Famers? Why is there no fan vote? Why don't we get to control who's in the Hall of Fame? We go to see them. We're the ones who are venturing to Cooperstown and all of these places. Let us have control of who we want to go see.
Oh yeah.
If ultimately they did like a fan Hall of Fame vote and Pete Rose got in, that's how it should be. If ultimately Dan and I are in the minority and Pete Rose is voted out of the Hall of Fame, okay, all right. At least the fans had a voice in it. That's my problem with the Hall of Fame and baseball and Pete Rose is, you can't erase the fact that he's the all-time hit leader. Sure,
yeah,
he gambled on baseball. He lied about it for many years, but include that on his plaque. It's a part of his story.
Yeah,
it's okay to say that. A guy like Ty Cobb is in the Hall of Fame. He played with, he would target people with metal spikes. He wasn't the most savory of individuals.
Not at all.
But it's part of his story, and that's okay. Not everybody that's in the Hall of Fame is going to be a likable guy or a nice guy or have done all the right things at all the right times.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I'm okay with them putting Bonds in and Clemens in and A-Rod, all those steroid guys. Baseball made money on it. They were happy. We all watched it. We all loved it at the time. We'd probably go and want to see Barry Bonds baseball, the 73 home run ball, whatever, as a Cardinal fan, Mark McGwire was a big part of the 90s for me. I got no problem if Mark McGwire's in the Hall of Fame. Just include a note that, he did what he did. We all know what he did, but that doesn't erase the fact that was a big part of baseball.
Talk about the steroid era. Have them
have a steroid wing,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. They could all be there.
It would probably, if they put like a steroid era wing in the Hall of Fame, that would be the most interesting spot in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, easily.
People would flock to that,
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'm all for it. Go crazy with the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
get Pete Rose in there.
It's not just Sosa, McGwire, Bonds.
Exactly.
I mean, there was
tons of them.
I'm thinking of mustachioed Palmeiro.
Oh yeah.
Some of these other guys that didn't do it as much, but
Yeah.
still did it.
And Shoeless Joe. Get Shoeless Joe in the Hall of Fame, too.
Yeah.
I'm tired of that. All right, Dan, what do you got for me?
All right, let's see here. Oh, what's the best college football program of all time?
Okay. Best college football program. A few come to mind that are obvious. I'm not going to let recency dictate my answer. Alabama's the obvious choice today,
Yeah.
And I think technically Alabama has the most titles over the whole history of college football, dating back to Bear Bryant and things like that. So Alabama should be in the 2 or 3 program conversation. But for me, and there might be a little bias, family bias, there's one program for me that's the program in college football, and it's been that way dating back 100-plus years. I'm talking about Notre Dame football.
Yeah.
The reason I picked Notre Dame football is when you think Alabama, you can't think of Alabama without thinking of the SEC. Alabama and the SEC are one and the same.
Yeah.
Notre Dame has no allegiance
affiliate
to
anybody.
a conference.
Yeah.
Notre Dame is so big. They're so powerful in the sports world. They don't need to belong to a conference. Okay? That's how unbelievably rich the Notre Dame bloodline is. And they have their own network. NBC basically bows down to Notre Dame and says, we will give you whatever you want on the television rights side. So Notre Dame basically owns a television channel during college football season.
Yeah, I always thought that was funny.
So, yeah, Notre Dame, for me, easy. And I'm looking at you, Tom Brennan. What about you, Dan?
Well, I kind of think of like LSU and, and Alabama, Oklahoma, some of those teams that, it's my time. It's hard to say all time because I haven't watched all time. So, and I'm not a huge football fan, so I would have to stick with like Alabama or LSU.
Can't argue with those.
I mean, they're just good programs, decent coaches.
What about, I know there's one program that you're not a huge fan of because of their their trademark of the word the.
Oh, yes.
The Ohio State University. You could probably put them in the conversation, right?
You could, but I would have them losing to Michigan every year.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Jonathan Schatz, I hope you're not listening. We at Office Essentials have an Ohio State alum, I believe, who would cringe at the thought of that. So,
yes.
Jonathan, please direct your hatred towards Dan. Change his email password if you have to. Do whatever you got to do to Dan. I didn't say that.
Hey, if they would stop saying "the" every time they're on the screen, then they would not even catch my attention. But because they think they are the elite college football program, and they're not,
There's one program we didn't mention, and I don't think they belong in the conversation, but it's funny. I was actually watching a 30 for 30 this morning. I only caught about half of it. I'd seen it in the past. It was on the Miami Hurricanes of the late 80s when Jimmy Johnson was there, and they had Michael Irvin, and they were just like the bad boys of college football. They were calling them the Raiders of college football.
Yeah.
They don't belong in the conversation all time, but there was a period of time, and even recently, where the Miami Hurricanes, the U, they were as interesting a program as there was in the country.
Yeah.
So they kind of get a slight honorable mention in terms of recency, but
shady too. They were shady.
Very shady. I love that documentary if you ever have seen that 30 for 30 on them. All right, Dan. This is a good question. It's kind of a when will this happen question for you. So when, if ever, will the USA men's team win the World Cup?
Well, I'm sorry, but we don't have enough skill as Americans to win it. I apologize. Ever. I apologize, but we do not have enough skill ever. You think about England, and they grow up playing soccer and cricket, and a few other, maybe rugby. America has soccer, football, baseball, tennis, basketball, ping pong, archery. All these different things that. And especially since right now the big boom is specialized. American athletes, these kids are so specialized in their sports that it's not fun to watch all the time. To watch some of these elite baseball teams that are out there. I've always felt a little sorry for my nephew loves playing baseball, so he always enjoyed it. But for him, he was playing year round, and sometimes he had to be at practice three days a week, and by still going to school. And what other sports can you play if you're 3 nights a week? You're playing for one team. So, I said there's a big fat no that we will ever be good at soccer, football, whatever you want to call it.
So I used, even dating back like 8 years, fairly recently, I used to say that in the next 4 or 5 cycles, so we're talking about 20 years time, I thought that the U.S. could make a run at it. They had I think it was 2008 where they ran up against Italy, who ended up winning it, and they gave them probably their toughest run of the World Cup that year.
Yeah, with Donovan and
I think McBride was still playing at the time.
Yeah,
they had a really solid team, and I thought, okay, if this is the progression of U.S. soccer, there's no reason they couldn't make a run. The World Cup can be fluky sometimes, because it's single elimination once you get to the knockout stage. However, I've shifted my opinion on that, and I think you hit pretty much all of my points. It's interesting that you mentioned England. So England, basically they're playing cricket, rugby, soccer. Soccer is the dominant sport in England.
Yeah.
So they haven't won the World Cup dating back 60, 70 years, I think now. I mean, it's been an ungodly long time since England has won the World Cup, and that's their sport.
Yeah.
Why would U.S. soccer think they have a more of a straight shot to the World Cup than a country like England? And I think you're completely right that there's too many sports. If you're not going to get if you're the 5th or 6th best option for sports in your country, the odds that you get that much great talent in a single 4-year World Cup cycle is really low. If you're not getting the guys like LeBron James and Mike Trout, just like pure athletes that if they were in another country, they would only know soccer. That's the reason why Brazil is dominant all the time. Argentina, Spain. I mean, they grow up and there is a sport to play essentially. They might play tennis as a hobby or some other sports as a hobby, baseball, something like that. But they're basically playing soccer from the age of 3 up, and that's all they know, and that's all they train for. And I think the U.S. I can't speak to it as well as like somebody like Stu, who's in our podcast, who follows U.S. soccer a lot more than I do. But I think the whole youth infrastructure of soccer is not conditioned to allow us to always produce the best talent. A lot of times money dictates things here in U.S. soccer, and families who pay the fees that some of these youth soccer programs encourage, their players get to go and advance further, and it's not always just best player. And that's why until we ever get to a point, which I don't ever see us getting to, where you look at a country like England where all of these Premier League clubs and second-tier clubs, they all have academies. They have under 10 teams, under 16, under 20, under 23s. They have all these different academies. And so young players at a very young age can get into an academy. They can build up, and it's easy to identify talent pretty early and sort of fast-track them to the first team. And so I think until we get to that point where you can easily identify young talent and get this young talent to realize and want to go to play soccer and not, have their attention diverted to baseball or basketball or hockey or all these other different sports that we have here in America, I don't see us ever winning a World Cup at this rate. It's unfortunate. I thought a few years ago that we were on the right track, and we've got some promising young talent, no doubt about it. There's some young, good English or American players playing over in England and Germany and all these other countries over in Europe, and they're on really good clubs, but we don't have the right coach in place here. We don't have the right infrastructure, so not a chance.
All the way up and down, soccer needs to change. Back in the day when you had select leagues, select teams, they were actually selected. It's something where these kids would, 30 kids would show up at the tryout, and all 30 were questionable whether they were going to make the team or not. But you go to, some of these places now, Gallagher, Lou Fuse, it's pay to play. They'll take your kid, and whatever the coach decides on day one, of the tryout, you're either on A, B, or C team, and and they stack the teams, and it's just not fun to watch. I feel sorry for some of these kids that are growing up playing select when it's not what we remember as select.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame. I don't think we're ever going to see a U.S. World Cup championship
in
our lifetimes.
Yeah.
All right, what do you got for me, Dan?
All right, well, let's see here. Okay. Hey, guys, big fans of the show. With WrestleMania recently taking place, what's your personal favorite WrestleMania moment?
Okay. I'm a kid of the 90s. I grew up on pro wrestling. Wrestling was huge for people of my age. We had...
Oh, yeah.
See,
Macho Madness.
That might have been your era. I don't know. Were you sort of like the Hogan,
Macho Man, yeah, Hulk Hogan, Brutus the Barber.
Okay, so I certainly
Jake the Snake.
I remember watching the VHSs of those, but I was more of like Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, Stone Cold. Like I happened to be peaking at my wrestling age during the Attitude Era, as they called it. So I got to watch all the craziness of The Rock and all that stuff. So
yeah,
for me, there's some good WrestleMania moments, but the one that I'm going to pick isn't necessarily the one that I think is the obvious one. Obviously, WrestleMania 3, Hogan slamming Andre.
Oh yeah,
that's the one people always go back to, and they're like, Andre had never. I don't think he'd ever been slammed, maybe once or twice, but it was such a rare occurrence in the '80s for Andre the Giant to ever get slammed that Hogan doing it was like the passing of the torch that you're the new face of pro wrestling. That's the obvious one for me. There's another one. It's a Hogan moment. I think it encapsulates what WrestleMania is, which is whether you're a wrestling fan or not, WrestleMania is a spectacle. It's larger than life. Yeah. It's this grand thing that people travel around the world to go see, and it's fireworks and all it's a big production. WrestleMania 18 is always kind of the one I think about when I close my eyes and picture like a WrestleMania moment. So it was Hulk Hogan, who was obviously much more advanced by this point in his career.
Yeah.
This is like late 90s, early 2000s. I don't remember the exact year, but it was Hulk Hogan versus The Rock.
Okay.
So it was these two generational Goliaths going.
So this was when Hulk was in his dark phase?
Yes. So this was like late in the NWO phase. So he's like old. He's washed up at this point, but he's still Hulk Hogan. He's still a draw, you know. Yeah. And going into the match, Hulk was he was the heel, he was the bad guy, and The Rock was the face, and he was the fan favorite, So going into this match, you had The Rock as the hero and Hulk as the villain, and it's these two epic Goliaths going up against each other. And during the course of the match, the fans actually turned on The Rock in real time and started cheering Hogan on because they revered who Hulk Hogan was. And I think The Rock won the match. My memory's kind of fuzzy now. I haven't watched this match in many years. But I just think the idea of that's what WrestleMania is. It's these two larger-than-life characters, The Rock, and Hulk Hogan. Like these two you'd never see. It was like a dream match. You always talk about dream matches and things like this. And so for me, WrestleMania 18, Hulk Hogan and The Rock, the fans made the match. So if you ever go on YouTube and look at that match, and you'll be blown away by it. What about you?
Well, you've already mentioned it, but I am total old school when it comes to that. So to see Hulk pick him up and slam him, and then do his chest, his chest bump, whatever you used to call that, where he was just just kind of. He'd talk to the fans, he'd swing his arms, and then listen to the fans. I mean, that was wrestling, and that to me is just how good it was. And it's I kind of forget a lot of those big cards back in the day, but it's funny, like WrestleMania 1, 2, 3, all the way to 5 or 6, whatever. The whole card was good matches.
You're right.
And to watch like the Road Warriors or
you had like Ted DiBiase, Ricky Dragon Steamboat.
Oh, Ricky the Dragon was awesome, and
you had mentioned Brutus Beefcake.
You remember the Animal?
Yeah.
Big John Studd.
Yeah. Well, and the great thing about those early WrestleManias was it was really the first sport, whether or not you want to call wrestling a sport, whatever. It embraced celebrities. You had Cyndi Lauper at the time. Mr. T was in a match back then, like They were like drawing these huge celebrities.
Lou
Lou Albano.
Lou Albano.
Captain Lou
right.
Albano.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
God, yeah. Some of those early WrestleMania cards had such big celebrities that came, and I'm trying to think. They even had huge people sing like the national anthem and stuff back in the day, well before like the halftime show was a thing. You know, those are like the precursors of all these sports now, bringing in these celebrity stars. You know, like Vince McMahon deserves a lot of credit for making celebrities and sport kind of come together in an interesting way. You know?
Yeah, it's just I just think it was so funny that that back in the day they were so genuine, and not to say that they aren't anymore, that that these personalities that these guys pick up, but really where do you go when you have one guy who eats the belt buckle, and then you have another guy that brings a snake into the ring, and
Jake the Snake.
And I'm trying to think of the blue.
You thinking of Big Boss Man?
Oh, the Big Boss Man, and by the way, the Big Show.
Big Show
has a show on Netflix.
How is it? Did you watch it?
I watched the first episode, and
it's like a sitcom, right?
It's a sitcom. It's a little cringy at some points, but whoever plays his wife, I've loved her since 2.5 Men.
Who is she on 2.5 Men?
She was the squeaky girlfriend that was like the dental hygienist or whatever.
Okay.
Like real tiny girl, and I like them short. But yeah, it's a decent show.
It's like a family sitcom. Like he's got like kids, and it's like his.
Yes, yeah. So he this is his second wife, and then his first daughter from his first marriage has to come and live with him.
Is it based on his real life story?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I'm probably to some extent maybe, but probably not.
Okay.
But I just back in the day, wrestling personas were so much better than they are now.
Yeah, they were larger than life. That's for sure. Sergeant Slaughter. All of them, they're all like flooding back into my brain now. Like Ultimate Warrior.
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, there were so many. Yeah, WrestleMania is always a good time. I didn't happen to catch WrestleMania this year.
And on the last note here, if anybody has YouTube, go and watch Saturday Night Live where The Rock was hosting, and they do a little cutaway with The Rock and another wrestler, and he's not playing The Rock, he's playing some other character, but he just rips on this guy that is just so personal that it's not even funny.
Yes, beyond that, The Rock hosting SNL just in general.
Oh yeah.
Like that was this was well before he had like this massive movie career. You knew very early if you were a wrestling fan in the 90s, like this guy could talk and was entertaining on a level you just never seen before in a pro wrestling ring,
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember watching The Rock on SNL like live for the first time in the 90s.
Oh no, this one's recent.
This is a recent one.
This is a very recent one
okay.
because he's talking with Bobby Moynihan is the other character. So you have to see this.
Bobby Moynihan and The Rock. I'm gonna look for that one. Okay.
It is absolutely hilarious.
Okay. All right, Dan. Well, I got the final question of the week for you. Are you ready? Okay. All right, Dan. Your life depends on the outcome of one hockey game. Who are you putting in goal for that game on your life? You got 3 options, okay?
Okay.
You've got Patrick Waugh, you've got Martin Brodeur, and you've got Dominik Hasek. So one game, your life's on the line. You get Waugh, Brodeur, or Hasek in net. Who do you trust with your life of those 3?
Wow.
The reason I'm sure somebody picked these 3 was during that sort of 90s period. These were the 3 predominant goalies. They're kind of hard to separate from each other.
The 3 hot ones. Wow, no Mike Liut, huh?
No Mike Liut. Would you put Mike Liut in there over one of them?
Vinny Riendo? No Vinny Riendo.
Freddie Brathwaite?
Yeah, Freddie. Wow, I'm gonna go with the Dominator.
The Dominator. Okay, Dominik Hasek. So why are you going with the Dominator?
Well, I just felt like he was the one who would. I mean, he came out of Buffalo. Buffalo was horrible.
Horrible. Just
horrible
terrible
team, and yet they were always decent enough because he could put up numbers, whereas Brodeur had what, 4 lines of forwards in front of him?
Yeah, Scott Stevens.
At least 3 deep, and the Scott Stevens and Patrick Waugh.
Niedermeyer. Yeah, Patrick Waugh had
Sakic, Forsberg, the rest of them.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go with Hasek.
Okay. I'm gonna I'm going to think about this one. If I just had to pick my favorite goalie of the three is Waugh, just personal favorite. I think the most talented of the three is Hasek. But if my life depends on it.
Oh, talented, I think. The most talented is Brodeur.
Brodeur, okay. We'll have to debate more of that later. The reason why I'm not picking Waugh with my life is he was way too erratic. He's way too much of a hothead.
Yeah.
Patrick Waugh, if he was invested in my life, he might go out of his way, but I feel like Patrick Waugh could just blow a gasket and I'm dead. Hasek, I think, relied so much on his natural flexibility and just ingenuity. Like a lot of times Dominic Hasek made saves that you're like, that guy, he clearly didn't think about that because it was all instinct. And
yeah.
I worry that maybe he leaves himself out of position because I think a lot of Hasek's great saves were because he was not the best positionally. Of the three, the most consistent was Brodeur. He was the most assured. That's why he has the most wins.
That's why I think he was the most technically savvy.
And I can understand that.
Because he was always in the right position,
Yep.
and he was always set up to make that save, whereas, like you said, Hasek,
yeah,
kind of played by the seat of his pants.
Yes, and was amazing at it, no doubt. I mean, but I think if my life's on the line, I want to go with the consistency and the assuredness of Brodeur. So I'll disagree with you on this one, and we'll put this up on a Twitter poll because I think it's an interesting question. So I'm going to go Brodeur. Dan's got Hasek. Neither of us trust Patrick Waugh to save our life.
I mean, if Hasek and Brodeur aren't on that list, then I mean he's your next go-to. I don't know who. I don't know who else.
Maybe like Ken Dryden or.
I mean,
there's not many options.
I really won't go past the 90s.
Yeah.
With goaltenders because
it's just a different game.
It's just exactly. It's a stand-up game. If it's a game where we know we're getting into a scuffle, Ronnie Hextall.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Ronnie Hextall. Yesterday, NBC Sports put up a little graphic that this day, however many years ago, he was the first goalie to score a goal.
Yeah, 1983.
Yeah. So, Ronnie Hextall came up yesterday. I saw him, so it's funny you mentioned him. All right, well, that's going to do it for our mailbag of questions. We appreciate everyone who sent in questions. For anyone listening that wants to send something in for us to answer next week, please feel free. We'll be happy to answer anything off the wall, ridiculous, whatever you got for us, send it our way.
Anything sort of sports related, and if you anything you want to send.
Yeah, it can be about pop culture, whatever. Yeah, just send us something fun. We're trying to make sure that you, the listener, is having fun. We know everyone's sitting around working from home during quarantine. We just want to provide a little bit of entertainment for you for an hour and a half.
And speaking of pop culture, I just want to throw this little out there that with my self-quarantine, I have my guitar next to me a lot of times. And if anybody knows me, I know 3 chords, which is G, C, and A. No, I'm sorry, G, C, and D. So I don't know much on the guitar.
Acoustic?
Acoustic, yeah.
Okay.
I always have my acoustic next to me. And so I was riffing off something the other day, and I was playing something. I was like, "Ooh, this sounds pretty good. Oh, this sounds. Ooh, this is getting pretty nice." And then the more I'm singing, the more I'm thinking about it. I'm like, this is Bop. Oh no.
How'd you gravitate towards Bop?
I have no idea, but I don't really think that's what I was actually playing. But in my head, it was just the whole guitar riff that was just like.
Dan, I implore you this week to record yourself playing Mbop, and we will put it in next week as our intro music instead of the usual STL Break intro music. If Dan records Mbop, it's going in the intro music next week. Stay tuned.
Oh, I'd have to take the equipment home.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, but we'll be back in about 60 seconds. Don't go anywhere. So, Dan, I must admit, as I was driving into work today, it was like a ghost town out there in the parking lot.
I think everybody's freaking out about this coronavirus, Andrew.
It sure feels like it. I know it's got the whole country on lockdown right about now. Don't worry, though. Dan and I are here with 4 essential tips to help talk you through the virus. Number 1, let's wash those hands, people. I always tell my son, sing the alphabet song while you're washing to get a good, thorough clean.
Andrew, I've been skipping handshakes. I know I look a little rude, but it has to be done right now.
Yeah, and 3rd, keep a safe distance. Dan and I have 6 feet between us right now, which is recommended.
And lastly, stay home.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We are going to get to our final segment, and then we're going to let you get back to whatever else you were doing. So this week we started a new tournament, which is our greatest sports video game of all time. These votes have been going on the Twitter page, so if you're on Twitter, go to the STL Break and follow us, and you can follow along with the tournament. You can vote on all of our matchups. So what we've got is we're down to the Sweet 16. These matchups are going to get underway tomorrow. That's Tuesday, April. What day is it anymore? It's Tuesday, April 14th.
14th, okay.
14th. Today's the 13th, I think. Yeah.
Is it? Okay. The 16th is my sister's birthday,
Oh,
so I got to.
well, happy birthday, Dan's sister. So, okay, we're going to look at the final 16 sports video games that are going to kick off matches this week. So the first match is going to be in our 1970s and 1980s bracket. It's going to be Pong versus Blades of Steel. So a classic arcade game versus a classic Nintendo NES game. You've got Golden Tee going up against Mike Tyson Punch-Out, so another classic arcade versus classic Nintendo. Those are all the top 4 seeds. Then in the 1990s, you've got NHL 94, which has seemed to be like a clear favorite already. It's going up against the 4 seed. I know it's close to Dan's heart. It's Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, so that one's going to be a tough one for Dan, NHL 94 and Tony Hawk.
Oh, yeah.
Then you've got the 3 seed NBA Jam going against the 2 seed Super Mario Kart, which did really, really well in the first round. So Mario Kart and NBA Jam. We're then going to jump over to 2000 to 2004. You've got Madden 2004 going up against WWF No Mercy. Then you've got Gran Turismo 3 going up against NFL 2K5. Finally, you've got the 2005 through present bracket. You've got NBA 2K11 going up against Tiger Woods PGA 12. And you've got Wii Sports going up against MLB 09 The Show. So again, those are 16 games. That's 8 different matchups. They're going to kick off tomorrow. When we get back next week, we'll let you know how we're doing in the tournament. Dan, of these 16 that are still remaining, any that stand out to you that you're rooting for to win, or maybe ones that you're guaranteeing will make it to the final?
No guarantees. I think Super Mario Kart is just that perfect game for anybody, any group of friends, because you could always pass that remote around. I always loved those types of games. Punch-Out's only a single player, so
yeah,
it's kind of hard to.
And how many of us actually beat it?
Yeah,
I'm just speaking on my own personal. I don't know if I ever beat Mike Tyson. I know I got to him once or twice, but did you beat him?
Oh yeah.
I bow down to Dan, the video game master. I never.
Oh, it was. I'm sure we played it hundreds of times. And
I just remember. I remember the training. You were like running left to right on the screen in that pink jumper. I remember a pink jumper.
Yeah.
What's his name? Mac?
Yeah, Mac.
Little Mac?
Yeah, Little Mac. Yeah. Yeah, but we had the code right to Tyson. So
That's right.
So you can eventually get right to it. But what I had played it through, at one point or another, played it all the way through and won it.
Wow. Just looking at the final 16, based on what I saw from the voting this week, seems like NHL 94 has a strong following, especially for everyone in that 90s era. And then
it made such a leap and bounds from 90, 92, 93. Not really huge jump from 93, but
was it the first video? I think it was the first hockey game that had blood. I think that was kind of what it was infamous for, and you could have fights because it was
94.
I think so, because it was in the movie Swingers. That was where it really gained popularity. It was in the movie Swingers with Vince Vaughn and Jon Favreau.
Yeah.
And they were sitting at the couch playing NHL 94.
Where the Sega edition had blood and the Nintendo edition did not have
blood. I think that's what it was, yeah. NHL 94 definitely got a good shot. And, I think there's something to Nintendo games people like. So Super Mario Kart, there's some nostalgia to that. And I think Wii Sports, I think it's about what games on this list were generally played by a lot of people. And I think a lot of people who don't necessarily play sports video games might have played Wii Sports. It's a good party game. Yeah. So I think Wii Sports is going to have a good run. So again, those are 16 games, 8 matchups. They're going to kick off tomorrow, Tuesday, April 14th. And that will do it for this week's episode, Dan. Please be sure to tell all your friends if you like what you heard. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode. We'll be back again next week to keep the content coming so you have something to listen to while you're working from home.
Yeah, and I was telling you earlier that I've been watching disc golf.
Oh yeah, you did
disc
mention
golf. So basically, it's exactly.
And where are you watching this?
This is on YouTube.
YouTube, okay.
I find a lot of my stuff on YouTube because it goes from one kind of suggestion to the next, and you can find some.
Are you a disc golf player yourself?
I am not, but they are in my cart on Amazon right now. When you're watching stuff at 11:30 and 12 o'clock at night, they somehow seem to end up in your cart.
It's a good thing you don't get Amazon stuff in 24 hours anymore, or else you make an impulse buy.
Yes, and I'd like to implore Amazon to put in a curfew anytime between 11 at night and 5 in the morning. You cannot actually order anything,
or like one additional button
exactly.
through the checkout process. Like,
are you sure?
Are you really?
Are you really sure?
How many drinks are you into the evening?
Yeah.
Whatever.
But I was just telling you earlier, and I just wanted to make sure.
So have you ever played disc golf in your life?
I have not,
okay.
But I heard Mark Tucker, who works here.
Yeah.
Great guy, is really funny. But he needs to check out his channel. But he's told me that he's played before, and there's a few courses around. There's actually
one in Wentzville.
There's actually 6 18-hole courses, and then probably like half a dozen more of 9 holes.
Jeez.
So so it's, once again, you need 1 or 2 frisbees, maybe 3, and the starter pack gives you 3. A driver, a mid-range, and a putter. But other than that, you can use a regular frisbee if you wanted, and
it's a good game to play too with the social distancing in place, because you're really only maybe around 1 or 2 people, and you can kind of keep your distance from them.
But I'm finding that more and more I'm gravitating to the sports that are outside, or the videos that are outside. I watch house framing videos. Look this up: the Crazy Framer.
Crazy, just spelled as you would think it. Crazy Framer.
The Crazy Framer.
Okay.
This guy in Canada, while it's 0 degrees, frames houses by himself.
Okay.
So you just got to watch this guy.
Okay.
And then that led me to these videos of people just chopping up wood using these industrial wood choppers, where they just throw a log in there and they hit a button, and you just see 6 logs come out, and then they put another log in there, 6 more logs come out, and I will watch it for hours, and I don't know why, but it's just so soothing, and it is perfect if it's 2:15 on a Saturday and I need to take a nap. I'm putting that in, and sure enough, an hour later I'm waking up going, that's the best sleep I've ever had.
It's so funny you end up on that, because there was one day last week where it was like midday, and I was craving a sports fix, and I couldn't find anything on TV, and I happened to flip to a lumberjack competition.
Ooh.
And they had like the giant trees, and they were taking chainsaws and doing
skill saws, the biscuits.
Oh yeah.
Biscuit cut.
Tons of fun. So I ended up watching, and my 2.5-year-old son loved the lumberjack competition, so he's hooked on lumberjack competitions.
Yeah,
but
I'm trying to think of the brothers that are.
There was a brother pair.
They're so prominent, and they've been around for years too.
The best part of the show, though, was those deep, thick Canadian accents, like real deep. I mean, it was funny. So, all right, well, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you again next week. Yeah, that's funny. There was a brother pair.